Hi everybody. So I wanted to give you an example of an introduction that has some pretty common problems that I see in a lot of introductions that I get, okay? It lacks specificity and support, so let's go take a look at it. Okay, so yeah, as I say up here, the common issue that this introduction illustrates is a lack of specificity and support. And so it starts off, traditionally people have been completely in control in terms of food relationships. So this is a pretty common problem in that traditionally is very vague. You might describe this person as sort of doing a history of the controversy, but they're just not specific about when these things occurred. So maybe this person means, pre-agriculture, like during, the hunter-gatherer period of our evolution, or people who still live in hunter-gatherer societies are completely in control. I don't know what they mean by food relationships, though. That's a vague term. And then they say next, the need to eat was something that arose from hunger and the pure desire to survive. So that's good. They're explaining what they mean in the previous sentence. And I get a better sense of what they mean by food relationships. They don't mean relationships between people. They mean their relationship to food. It was just eaten for survival. Again, I don't know if that's accurate. They go on to say, eating for the sake of curing boredom and providing stimulation was not a concept. I don't know if that's true. My guess is that it's probably not true. I assume that even hunter-gatherers ate for celebratory reasons. They ate for like social bonding reasons. Obviously, it always had to do with nutrition and survival, but my uneducated guess is that this is not accurate. This statement is not accurate. So this person needs to have, if they're going to make a claim like this, they need to find support for it in some of their research sources. And then, as options have broadened and priorities have shifted, the idea of food has been totally revolutionized. And again, I'm thinking, okay, when? Since the advent of McDonald's? I'm not sure. Okay. With the advent of processed food. So when was that? What are we defining processed as? When we began milling flour? When? The traditional rules of food quality and composition no longer apply. And then the consumption of food is now treated as more of a habit that many individuals feel they cannot be trusted to manage. So I think this person has some research that might support that statement, but they need to include it in their introduction. So what I like about that introduction is it's clearly sort of the history of the controversy model, where they say, like, this is how things have changed and how we've gotten to this problem, and I'm going to be talking about that problem, right? But they need to show that they've done their research. Because with these introductions, you're trying to establish your credibility in the introduction. You're trying to establish that you've done your research, that you know what you're talking about. And because unless you have some sort of degree or training that I'm not aware of, none of us, including myself, is an expert on these topics. So even if I were writing this paper, I would have to cite sources to prove my credibility and to prove I know what I'm talking about. So I think you should be introducing a source in the introduction and saying, according to such and such study, according to the research of anthropologists, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Those things would build your credibility and show your audience right off the bat that you know what you're talking about. I think the only situation in which you wouldn't have to do that is if you were doing a focusing incident introduction on a personal example where your personal experiences give you some sort of authority. So there is a student right now writing the research paper who is talking about how many college students are food insecure, and she's talking about that issue. She is a college student. I don't know if she's food insecure, right? But she is at least a person who's stressed out about the cost of food, working while she's going to school, and basically trying to maintain a budget, and that's affecting the way that she eats. So she might talk about that personal experience in her introduction as a focusing incident. And her authority would be based on the fact that she is currently a person living out the problem that she's talking about. Okay? So I think that would be the only situation in which you could do an introduction and you wouldn't necessarily need to bring in an outside source to establish your credibility. So I hope that makes a little bit or clarifies the strategies of these introductions and what you're trying to establish about yourself as the writer in the introduction. And as usual, let me know if you have any questions.